Hi, everybody, and welcome to our network effect presentation on how to use employee advocacy to grow your employer brand on social media. So I'm really excited that you're all joining us today. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speakers. They'll be sharing their unique success stories about how they authentically grew and scaled their brand by leveraging their greatest asset, their employees. Today's market presents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to gain a competitive edge and snag those best candidates. But the challenge of how do we stand out is really not unique to any one of us. So I'm really excited for our speakers to share with you today how they got started and how they collaborated with their brand advocates to stand out even in the middle of a pandemic. So we have a saying in the industry, content is king, but creating that content certainly isn't a one-person job. So the importance of engaging your brand ambassadors is not only for content creation, but it also yields results. From a lead generation perspective, employee advocacy is an always-on marketing channel. It results in 5 times more web traffic and 25% more leads. And according to Elite Daily, 43% of millennials rank authenticity above the content itself when they're consuming information. Nicole Parrish is the Global Attraction Experience Lead at Qualtrics, where she works with an attraction-led talent team to grow and diversify their business through employee stories. And she'll be sharing how they grew their brand at scale at Qualtrics. And Sean Scott is the talent acquisition manager at B Senior Living, where he manages a team of recruiters and supports V's recruitment and sourcing strategies. He also owns the entire social recruiting strategy at V, and he'll be sharing how he developed that strategy from the ground up and has stood out during this time, even against the competition. So please welcome me in joining Nicole Parrish and Sean Scott. Don't forget to put your questions in the QA section and give them some feedback using those emojis. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started and take it away, Nicole.
Excellent. Thanks, Carissa. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Parrish. Just by way of a little bit more of introduction, because, we all like to know exactly what got us here. I've been with Qualtrics now for nearly 3 years. And prior to this, I was working at GE, first as a recruiter before I came into my talent brand career. Like many recruiters, I came into the industry by accident. I really found a love for helping people find their next job. But eventually I fell out of love with the bad news end of recruiting and realized that through talent brand, we could help ensure candidates had a clear idea of the kind of company they were joining. So just to set the scene a little bit, because I think it helps understand the context of why we are running our attraction strategy the way we are, I view recruiting as an industry with a deep moral responsibility. We interrupt people's lives and propose new directions to them, resulting in them uprooting themselves and those closest to them based on what we sell and what they see. Recruiters have to be the gatekeepers of trust with their audiences. And I believe that a transparent and authentic talent brand is one of the ways that they can do that. In respect to Qualtrics, just to give you an idea of who we are, we're the experience management company. We're helping our customers to design and improve the experiences that they provide across their brand, product, customer, and employee experiences. And we have kind of a unique background, which is really important to our talent brand story and what I'll be telling you about today. We basically not only started off as the category creator for experience management, but we went through a roller coaster of an independent debut. From startup unicorn based in Provo, Utah, to IPO plans, to being bought by SAP, to being IPO'd by SAP. It's been an adventure, to say the least. And our company's developed really quickly, over doubling in headcount since I joined, with a plan to grow further by well over 2,000 employees over the next couple of years. And that's across our global team. And right now we're using CareerArc as a part of that approach, kind of as a billboard system. So we want our teams focused on sharing stories and that content, which is obviously what we're focusing on today. And it's not just about the jobs for them. So with CareerArc, we're able to keep them focused on sharing our highest return content versus kind of worrying about the job aspect. So if we get into this, what is this all about? What's the premise of our talent attraction strategy? Well, like I mentioned before, we view the role of the recruiter as one with deep responsibility to our job seekers. Taking on a new job is right up there on the list of big decisions, as we all know, like buying a house and getting married. And I mean, think about it. For many employers, we're asking people to risk the stability of a current job and the known pros and cons, potentially relocate and take on the risk of us based on the promise of however many interviews they've completed. At least when people get married, they have an opportunity to try it on. So when we boil our attraction strategy at Qualtrics down to its base objective, it's to help us date before a recruiter slides into those DMs with the promise of a long-term good thing. And the role of our talent brand is to be transparent, authentic, trustworthy, and consistent, with the expected impact being that it establishes us as an employer of choice with our targeted audiences. So that entire premise has guided us from accidental talent brand to a point where we have vast amounts of employee-generated content, which created our base EVP, and which has been at the root of about 25% of our hires year to date. Sounds simple, right? No? Yeah, I know. So let's bring the how to life for everyone here. So let's set the scene with the opportunity. When I first came into Qualtrics, the team I joined was brand new. People said talent brand and meant job postings on LinkedIn, as I think many of us probably have experienced or kind of thought of when we thought of talent brand initially. And then to top it off, that not so straightforward background of ours was about to come into life full force. And we had no budget, but I think we're all pretty used to that by now. So, sob story to one side. What we did have, though, and what was going well for us was an awareness that the Qualtrics team had a sense of purpose and we found ways to connect that sense of purpose to what they did as part of our team, right? Our team knew why they were doing their jobs with us. We were also aware that the communication of that sense of purpose really connected people with the way that we were telling that transparent and authentic and trustworthy, consistent talent brand story. And so that's where we started. So we started this off and we went through kind of 3 core steps. So I'll walk you through what that looks like. First off, we started by gathering stories. In our case, it started with a series of stories that we called Why Qualtrics. Very simple, super basic on that side. But the premise was simple. We used the Qualtrics platform to host a survey that started with asking about what the person felt their purpose was, their why, so to speak. From there, we asked how that connected with what they did at Qualtrics. And then we gave about 20 other questions as options. They could pick 3 to 5 of them. They didn't have to answer all of them, but we know that a buffet when it comes to questions is probably a little bit better. But those questions covered a variety of topics. And we really wanted to give our authors a chance to talk about what was important to them. And the questions covered things from things like favorite memories at work to school experiences to life hacks. What they do is they include images from their real life, the real Qualtrics life with their submission. And then their work is basically done when it comes to giving us the content. In the background, we do a very, very light copy edit. We want people to be proud of the story that goes to market, obviously, but we do very little else. And this has been the key, as far as we're concerned, to success in gathering the volume of stories of content that we have to work with. Our team built up trust that we were going to tell their story. And that was step 2. We got the authenticity out of their stories because our team trusted that we weren't going to over narrate what they were sharing as their own employee experience. They saw that they didn't have to be throwing Qualtrics a parade in their stories to have them published. And everyone who has submitted one and included a picture with it, have to have a picture, they've been published, program to date. We've had people share poor onboarding or management experiences in their stories, right? Nobody is just telling, oh, Qualtrics is wonderful. It's been fantastic. High five, go team. We're not getting those kinds of stories. We're getting reflections of their actual employee experience. And sometimes they tell a turnaround story. Sometimes they don't. But what this has done is it's resulted in our team being willing to share at scale. So that really simple gather this concept piece has resulted in a really big volume. The team believes that their stories are being told. So they trust us with that, right? But externally, and this is where it gets exciting, the people now see, our candidates see, the volume and candor of the stories that we are sharing, and it's built trust with our audiences. This means that we have a viable and robust counterpoint to anonymous review sites. And sure, those are important, don't get me wrong. But when you see a handful of poor reviews versus several hundred employee stories, it's easier to work your way through what's useful and what's not. And it's also meant that our life channels, so the Qualtrics life channels that we run, they become a place where our employees and our attraction audiences mingle. You'll find a lot of our employee engagement happening on what we're sharing, and that employee engagement translates into further trust with our candidates. So we build that trust up, And then we have the opportunity to move into step 3, which is all about scaling and iterating and making things better. We're actually right now in the process of recentering our stories because we've moved from that one core storyline to about 6 that are serialized, and now we're doing quite a bit of. And we have another sort of 6 thematic elements. So it's time to revamp. But this recentering is allowing us to better show how belonging works at Qualtrics, to show how career development works, to demonstrate our culture, and to comprehend our impact. But none of that would be possible without the trust that we built from that single storyline and just taking those stories as they came into us. I think one of my favorite examples of how we've pivoted to create the content that we needed to be sharing externally was how we brought to life our values. We call them the tacos. And we did that through some history-based pieces and interviews with the people who were in the room where it happened. We doubled down not only on having our teams be the source of the story, but our leading value, transparency, coming out by crafting that story that shares the bit of the who, what, when, where, why, all of that. And what we did is we then gave that to the public. The public could see, oh, hold on, this is about them internally, but I have access to it without even having to do anything else. And that was really important, again, underlining that trust with our audiences. That article that we built, it was from 2019, and it's still one of our top performing pieces. Before we go to the next piece, I will tell you, for anyone who's wondering just how many people are running this, because I'm sure that's a feeling of, okay, how big is that team? Well, we have dozens of people who are writing, responses to those prompts. So filling out their Why Qualtrics survey. The rest of the work, from editorial review to publication to amplification through those life channels, is done by 1.5 people. We'd be better with more, sure. Bigger teams are always more fantastic in the realm of pace and scale. But this is really being done on a scaled basis. We publish 4 times a week, but even if you published once a week, you would have a great volume of content that you could pull from stories like these to populate your social channels, both the company owned and those of your brand ambassadors, and build out highly engaged team members. So once we had this content, it was really about moving into the actual dating at scale. If you want to know what an engineer in Seattle who graduated from the University of Michigan thinks of Qualtrics, we've got a story for that. Or how about a sales development representative who's motivated by career growth? Got one of those too. So we had the representation that we needed to get going. So then it was about distribution. And so we focused on 3 core areas with these simple stories. First was our life channels. We focused on a combination of stories, employee-generated content, encouraged by that trust that we had built with our team, and jobs. For this, we are using Later.com and CareerArc to manage those couple of spaces across our social channels. Interestingly, what's pretty cool from our perspective is that our CareerArc visuals all come either from employee-generated content or from photo shoots captured by our creative team. So the visual aspect of our CareerArc posts mirror the story-led approach that we have for the rest of our content. It creates a lot of synergy. The stories are able to be broken up into their key themes to create multiple posts and viewpoints on the Qualtrics employee experience. So I can reliably get 3 sets of posts out of every story that we publish, sometimes more. Often it actually comes down to how many visuals were shared with us, to be fair. So our vast volume of captured content, which right now is well over 500 stories, minimally expands by about 3x for the purposes of our life channels. So we've got the corporate owned pieces taken care of. But let's talk about those brand ambassadors. For us, we hold the position that every employee is a brand ambassador. They're all talking, they're all doing something, so they're all a brand ambassador. It's the amount of vigor behind their ambassadorship that varies based on their level of engagement, their free time, and their interest in the content that's available. So the way that they're important to our strategy is that, one, they're often the first port of call when we have a new story ask, right? Hey, get your story out there. And that's the first thing we teach them. Their best way to be advocates is to share their experience as often as they can. But we also teach them about the value of an active network presence for their own, jobs, and to help them share stories and connect with their network more deeply. We've also been onboarding them to to CareerArc in buckets, but their main tool here in this case is Everyone's Social. And this is where they can go ahead and discover and schedule content. We often get asked about this brand ambassador approach and if it makes them more poachable. And we haven't seen above normal numbers in attrition within the group, just for anyone who's wondering. We also get asked if we incentivize. And unless you count stickers for laptops, no, we haven't previously, though it's not out of the question in the future. But that's more of a reflection about us thinking about our employee experience than about the level of engagement. So these stories all feed in, the brand ambassadors take them and share them with their network with their own narrative attached. And oftentimes they'll go ahead and bring their own employee experience into that story. And then finally, we have our TA team working to be attraction led. They use our content library probably the most as they're learning how to identify the motivators of their personas, of their audience, and distribute that content based on their personas rather. They're using these stories not only on their networks and in their one-to-one comms, but just in general as they're building out their relationships with their managers and with their audiences. So beyond our CRM, just from a tech stack perspective, they're also using Everyone's Social for that scheduling. And then we have them set up through CareerArc to distribute jobs. Like I said before, we want them to focus on the story distribution to engage their networks versus worrying about the job posting. We really remind them that CareerArc is like their auto drive functionality of a snazzy car. Let the car worry about the jobs. They worry about the content and engaging with their audiences. If they're providing engaging content, then the presence of the jobs is a subtle nudge to consider that your story could be a part of the Qualtrics one. It's that nice sort of psychological side of things of, oh, that's a cool story. Oh, they had a job like that the other day, connecting those couple of pieces. So these three activation models have and will continue to be the way that we approach the market. So before I share the results, because I'm sure everyone's like, okay, 1.5 people, lots of stories. What exactly are you achieving here, my friend? I want to ask people just to kind of share in the chat. I'd love to know, what stories do you already have that you could be leveraging with a model like this to populate the places you need to be? Because if you can't create your own content for any reason right now, consider that, if you have a way to capture a similar approach of, taking established content and sharing it out with your networks, could you be doing something like that right now? So we'll let it pop up in the chat here, but while that happens, we'll move into talking about what it is that we've exactly achieved here. So I picked kind of top 5 things. This kind of number setup that you see here is really what's giving us confidence that this is working. There are main takeaways that we use to understand, is the content working and is the activation working? And long and short of this story is yes, it's not too shabby. We're seeing that the content we're gathering and the manner of distribution is deeply involved in our hiring success. We're also seeing that this content is withstanding the challenges presented by COVID and the exceptionally candidate-driven market. We've seen 1,000+% increases in engagement with this content year over year between 2020 and 2021, which tells us that this is continuing to be the kind of content that our teams our candidates rather are looking for. So as you're considering how to build your employer brand in a way that results in quality social media content, I have 2 pieces of advice. Number 1, ask yourself what your candidates are really wanting and needing to know. Number 2, ask yourself what your teams are willing to share. Then do the work to have those things meet. If you can start creating content from those 2 positions, your results will be content that your team is willing to share. That content builds trust with their networks and with personas similar to them through your corporate and life-related channels. That trust results in greater discovery, widening the top of your funnel, and more importantly, it kicks off the future of your employee engagement. That cycle pays back and ensures your employer brand is thriving where you need it to.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Sean, take it away from here.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Scott, and I'm the Talent Acquisition Manager here at V Senior Living here in Chicago. If you're not familiar, V is a high-end senior living community. We have 10 communities across the U.S. in 6 states, and we're really that hybrid between hospitality and nursing. So our residents, live in independent living. We have skilled nursing, assisted living, and memory care, and really have that full continuum. So I do support, talent from that side, along with my boss and my recruiters. We are focused right now on resident care. As you know, the senior living industry was hit probably the hardest, during the pandemic. But fortunately for us, we were actually able to come out of the pandemic and actually, build our brand and kind of rebrand and have an even stronger brand. And that's really been the focus over the course of 2021. And so quick question for you. So when you think about, senior living, I think there are many connotations and memories that you might have. I know, for example, I remember my grandmother was in a nursing home that really didn't equate to what we have here at V. Most of the time we think of a nursing home, we think of very pre-made bland food, we think of bad smells, right? Older communities, infrastructure, high turnover, and very poor care. So really, that's kind of the connotation we have, in the industry. But really, on the flip side, V as an organization, as a company, is the complete opposite. So really at V, we have, gourmet food. We have a culinary team, executive chefs, sous chefs who make, fresh food from scratch every day. They're luxury work environments. If you go to our communities, I call them senior resorts. They're absolutely gorgeous. You look at our community in Naples, they have a swimming pool, a golf course. I mean, it's just, an absolutely beautiful community there. Very resort-like. We have a lot of growth and development opportunities, and that's something that I'll talk about here in a moment, where we have really pivoted to really highlight that. We've always highlighted that, but even more so here in 2021. We have great benefits, very high, employee retention, as well as quality care. When we think about, I give an example here of an animation that we created. When we think about culinary careers, most, who go to culinary school or work in restaurants, they don't really think about having a career in a senior living organization, right? They think about, restaurants, they think about hotels. And for us, we really want to provide opportunities for, even, students or those, in school to really think about, senior living as an actual career, because we do have career ladders at our organization, and we want to highlight that. So this is an example here of an animation that we did that really, highlights, the benefits of working for V, specifically us versus, a hotel or a restaurant. And this is an example of our executive chef in La Jolla Village in San Diego, and kind of gives his journey through the organization. So this is one of our first animations that we created to really highlight our brand here. And then, really thinking about it, how did we increase brand awareness? And thinking about doing that, during a pandemic, and really changing the connotations of senior living, all at the same time while requiring a vaccine. So we've really had a lot of challenges. Number one, the pandemic. At the beginning of the year in May, we actually, announced that we would be mandating the vaccine. But what we wanted to do is we didn't just mandate it and say, hey, this is when it's going to happen, and that's it. What we did is we talked about it. We actually did a survey. We surveyed our employees. Right after that, we did a Great Place to Work survey, and wanted to really, get their feedback. Our employees had worked so hard over 2020, right, during a pandemic. We continued to hire. They needed more support, so we wanted to get their feedback. We completed the campaign. We actually, received our certification. We got the Great Place to Work certification, which was a great feat. We also created a safety campaign, because as we announced the mandate, we also wanted to say, we want this to also be a safe place to work. We're not only great, but also safe. So we wanted to use those two words to really highlight that, because many of our competitors, hospitals at that time, were not requiring it. And, there's a lot of hesitation, for individuals, working in healthcare. They want to make sure that they can come to work and be safe. So created that safety campaign. And then highlighted, the safety, the great place, but also highlighting those culture and career advancement opportunities. Here at V, we have a culture that is very focused on learning and development, one that is very collaborative and supportive, and we take that employee feedback. When we looked at, the results from the survey, 92% of our employees said they felt safe coming to work, and this was after a pandemic. So if you think about that number, even after a pandemic, most of our employees felt safe, and 87% of those employees, felt that they had the right tools and resources to do their job and to do it effectively. So we did something right, in 2020. Now we're just getting that validation, and then on the next slide, you'll kind of see our campaign that we created. This was our safety campaign, and again, highlighting, not only being a great place to work, safe, all of the tools and resources that we have, talking about how our employees, our residents are safe. This is showing pictures of our employees getting vaccinated. As I said, 92% of our employees, feel safe coming to work, and being a great place to work as well. So we're really proud of one of this, and it highlights our awards as well. The Safe Place to Work, Great Place to Work designations as well. And then again, highlighting the career advancement opportunities. Again, most individuals in culinary and dining do not think of, senior living as a way to really have a career. And so we created this campaign. This is again is one of our executive chefs in San Diego to really highlight his journey, because it not only talks about, his journey in culinary, but also his journey at V. He was able to take advantage of the many resources that we provide, the management development program, and for him to also, take advantage of the benefits, and again, kind of comparing what it's like to work, in hotels and restaurants versus us. Many of our, culinary team members, they come from, the Ritz-Carltons, the Hyatts, the Hiltons, and they come here and they find a work-life balance, which they don't have, in restaurants or hotels. So this was another campaign we were very proud of, and really highlighting a story, because when we think about, what do candidates want to hear? They want to be able to relate to that individual, that person they're seeing in a campaign. So somebody can relate to, Chef Vasquez, who's coming from South America and really, living essentially the American dream, if you think about it, and having a career and work-life balance where he can support his family and enjoy time with his family as well. And so really thinking about, campaigns and content, I don't have a large team, as Nicole mentioned, I'm essentially a one-man show. I do help from other colleagues as well, but it's really important to, highlight those journeys that resonate, with candidates. As I mentioned, we have, Chef Vasquez, we have a lot of other great stories as well. And that's what candidates want to hear. I think a lot of times, and trust me, we've been guilty of this as well. When we look at some of our photography and campaigns, it's very scripted, right? It's very, very corporate, so to speak. We really want them to be more realistic, where the candidates can relate. So that's very important in thinking about content. Also highlighting what makes your company unique. I mean, I think we do that every day here at VI. I talk about, the benefits. I talk about, being able to really have a career progression. We talk about simple things, such as, hey, you can get some of our communities, you get a free lunch, that's unique. Most companies don't provide that. So really highlighting what makes, the company unique, and also in an industry they're not familiar with. I think that is something that overall in senior living we've struggled with. And we're, working with some of our other, even some of our competitors in the industry to really, make senior living a viable option for a career. Because again, if you think about not only hospitality, but also the nursing side, many nurses, who, CNAs, LPNs, who, worked during the pandemic, were burned out. Our employees are not, because, we have lower, resident patient ratios. It's again more work-life balance, all of those things to kind of compare to other industries or competitors. And then finally, just highlighting why work here. Everyone is hiring. As we know, we are in a market that we've never seen before. You have to stand out. We have to stand out. So what can you do? So, one of our areas of focus, this year, of course, in 2021 is, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Really showing what we're doing to highlight that. We at V, we've joined different organizations to, promote that. So really highlighting what are the benefits of working at your company. And then, again, I can't do it alone. We have brand ambassadors who really help push out content. I work with them. They're on their LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. We can push out that content automatically. We can also customize it. We have 10 locations in very different areas. So we can, customize it for the location, the images, and create very specialized content. And once you have great content, you'll gain more ambassadors. I mean, some of these animations we have here, this is one of our most recent in our dining room manager. I put it out there, and all of our ambassadors, and we get more ambassadors. They really want to push it out. So if it's great, it's creative, and again, it relates, to their employees, they'll push it out. One of the great things about V as well is we have a very strong employee referral program. So many of our dining room managers, our chefs, they will, tell their employees, hey, send this out to your friends, your family members, because we want to, get more employees like you. Essentially 30% of our hires for this year come from employee referrals, and we pay well for that as well. So that's really important too. And then, a career arc has great benefits. I've used this, since I've been with V, and I've been with V now over 2 years, and it really allows me to number one, have a reservoir of images and content, and I can easily update it. I mean, I can think, I go back, a couple weeks, or even I'll go back last year and think, hey, I did a post on, you know, Valentine's Day, or on a story about an employee, and I'll go back and I'll update it and make it more relevant. Change the image, change the hashtags, all of those things. That makes it really easy there. The automation and scheduling is a lifesaver. I can schedule things, weeks in advance, days in advance, and it's published there automatically on all of our brand ambassadors pages. Again, I'm a small team, so it allows me to really reimagine content and to update it more quickly. And then I also am always looking for our team, my colleagues, our brand ambassadors, to provide insight and support. As I mentioned before, we're kind of in the process of, rebranding with some of our images and making sure that they are relevant, to candidates, and versus, some of those that are more, photo shoots and content like that. So, after all of this, go through a pandemic. 2021, we look at rebranding. What have been some of our successes? Well, number one, we launched a Instagram page, which is another, medium that everyone is going to. We have different, people who are looking on different pages. Some of the younger people are on TikTok and Instagram. TikTok is probably next, but looking at what social media channels are best for those candidates there. We've created animations, as you've seen throughout the presentation here, on culinary and dining. We're focusing now on nursing as well as housekeeping. So those are coming up here in the next couple of weeks. Our safety campaign was a success. 98% of our employees are vaccinated, which is great. We received our Great Place to Work certification in 2021. We are also recognized as a best place to work for aging services by Fortune in 2021. And, in looking at our brand, I would say it's stronger than ever. As I said, when I started at V over 2 years ago, it's really been a progression in getting to this point. And, we're always, I think it's important to remember that we're always, trying to think of new and creative and innovative, stories and content to really, get your message out. Because again, what is going to bring a candidate to your page, to your organization? It's what they see on social media, essentially. It's what's going to attract them. Is it a video? Is it an image? Is it a hashtag? So really, thinking about that and updating that and getting that feedback. And if you're looking at something that doesn't work, okay, let's change it. I think we've had a great 2021, and we'll continue to do this and continue to rebrand, because I think even in this market, it's going to take a little while to get, over this, this hiring market that we're seeing. And hopefully with this rebranding, we can, stand out and attract more talent.
Thank you so much, Sean. Wow, some really practical ways to kind of take away from here that hopefully the audience can use. We're going to jump into a little bit of Q&A now. So let me go ahead and, go ahead and take a look at some of these questions that may have popped up. Okay, so there's one in here. Sean, this might be a good question for you, but Nicole, you can chime in as well. It says, what if you don't have 100 employee stories? How can you get started with a dozen stories and build a content strategy from there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't have 100 employee stories. I would love that, because I think that would help in some of our positions. But I think it's important to for me, for example, we have certain departments, dining, housekeeping, nursing. I think it's important to get one from each department, because again, if a nurse can relate to that story, or a housekeeper can relate to a certain story, then they're more likely to apply and be hired. So I think it is important to start small. I don't think you have to go big and get 100 stories. I think, yes, get one from each department and then build from there. I think that's the key, and that's what I've done in my strategy.
And I think just to add to that, from our perspective, we started really small. There were days where I'm talking to my manager about, okay, we don't have any stories to go into. What are we going to do next here? And so we had, a handful. And the best thing that I can recommend is to Sean's point, go with what you have, aim for, do I have representation at least in my main areas? So for us, it was our core departments and our core regions and the office locations. And then beyond that, it is around, hey, when you are doing this work consistently and you're building your trust with your employees, you're going to get more of that organic engagement out of them. They're going to want to tell their stories. And you can even start turning that into, all right, so-and-so, you've told your story was fantastic. Can you nominate 5 people whose stories you want to hear? That personal nomination piece has been a real big winner for us for really amplifying the impact of that ask. And then beyond that, it's finding the gaps, right? Okay, cool. I have 10 stories for the sales team, but not a single one of those is from a person who has returned to work from parental leave. I need that angle. So now I'm going to go out and see, does anyone have a cool story? Does anyone just have a moderately an interesting story, right? Or one that you personally would want to be reading? Then nominate those pieces. So start small and then plan and look at those stories on, okay, what angles does this story present? Maybe this story talks a little bit about their career growth. Maybe it's talking about why they've been a part of our company, why they've stayed. Take those couple of angles and utilize those in the way that you're talking externally. So maybe you do a focus on that person's story for a week. Cool. Or maybe you do an entire week about why people stay at my company, and you take those kinds of responses out of the 5 stories that you have available. All of those angles are really, viable for you. And on top of it, social media, we've all got the kind of memories of gnats to an extent sometimes. So you do have the ability to recycle some of this and go, hey, this story is still really important to us. The message is still really true. So don't be afraid to recycle some of those pieces. Anything more than 4 weeks between one post and another, you're pretty much good to go again. And that's how we actually really started was, hey, here's a story, post it this week. 4 weeks later, we post it again with a different picture. And it just brings people back into those story pieces.
I think those are both really helpful tips. Yeah, I think oftentimes too, the story, might seem quite large, and you're able to pare that down into smaller tidbits of quotes or testimonials, or you can repurpose it in messaging in one place and then imagery in another. So yes, it can be really easy to create 3 or 4 pieces of content from a single story. So that's really helpful. Thank you both. We have another question here. Has the pandemic changed your approach at all? Yeah, either of you. This could be good for both of you, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, as we, with our industry in senior living, we definitely changed our approach. We focused on the safety piece. That was key. That was key. And as we talked about, requiring the vaccine, it was safety. But with that, again, we also created more focus on, benefits and on employee growth and development. So it did, but I think it strengthened. I mean, honestly, it has strengthened our approach in how we get our message out there, and as we talk to candidates, I have, as I said, recruiters, who support some of our communities, and was talking to one earlier where she was talking to a candidate and said, we require the vaccine. She said, well, that's why I came to you. I came to you because I know that you're requiring this, and your competitor down the street isn't. So yeah, I mean, I think it's helped us, and it will continue to help us, keep that focus on safety, which we've always had, but it'll allow us, to even attract more candidates.
And for us, the story gathering portion has remained fairly much, fairly the same. The questions that we ask, again, remain pretty much the same. Our focus has changed slightly in remembering that we need to reemphasize how people have felt a part of the Qualtrics culture, those pieces of understanding that they may not have gotten in a virtual world versus being able to visit us at one of the sites. We've really doubled down on some of those pieces as we're moving to a hybrid work model where people will be in office but also at home. We knew that those were the messages that people needed to be able to see, because we had an opportunity or a responsibility to share those pieces of the story that they wouldn't get through an interview process or necessarily be able to find in other places. So where our biggest pivot was just around minding the new gaps that came up because of the type of experience they were having in the pandemic world.
We have one other question here. Are there any specific stories, for example, types of roles that are resonating with more than others right now? And that might vary for each of you depending on your industries.
Want to go, Sean?
Sure. Yeah. So for us, we're, as I said, we're that hybrid between hospitality and nursing. So as we know, the hospitality industry right now is really, struggling, to hire. But so what we've done, for our, campaigns, our content is really focused on those employee career growth and career ladders. So I think those are resonating. It allows them to really, see someone who maybe started, as a cook, or maybe even as a dishwasher, to kind of see that progression. I think that's important now, because especially, many who worked in the restaurant industry, hospitality industry, aren't going back there. So they're thinking, do I want to go back, or do I want to stay in whatever they're doing? Maybe they're working in a warehouse or something, who knows? But do I want to go back? Well, yeah, we want you to come back. We want you to come back and work here because you have the skill set, you have the culinary skill set, if you're in the kitchen, to do that. So that's really what we are focusing on right now. And that's, the culinary, and then we'll focus next on the nursing piece, as well.
And for us, we're really seeing a lot of the emphasis for our stories coming back to some of those gaps in experience that are driving people to seek out new employment after, a year and a half, nearly 2 years, multiple years of pandemic life. And that is varying from deeper understanding of how belonging works in a company, not just the overt, hey, we're here for DEI, but genuinely, how is belonging coming to life, not only in an in-office sort of situation, but a remote situation? What are you actually doing about it? And then looking at, leadership, and not only the side of what's my leadership experience, but how did my career grow by becoming a part of your company? I'd say we kind of have three core areas that we see our stories tend to sort of rotate around, and it's around our culture, the career growth, and the impact that those individuals can have. And I think our impact stories are edging out just a little bit right now in the realm of volume of traffic, as people are trying to go, okay, if I'm going to spend 40 hours plus a week with you, if I'm going to answer, emails at 5 a.m., if I'm going to come into an office for somebody, it better be worth my time. So those stories that are really kind of helping somebody understand that, oh, that's what I could do with them, those are really helping connect with people right now, and I'd say are probably our most successful.
Comes back to that authenticity, I think, which is definitely the big theme of the discussion today. So thank you so much, Nicole and Sean. For everybody in the audience, if you'd like to speak with Sean and Nicole a bit more, they will be hosting a roundtable. It'll be called Brand Narratives, that you can join shortly after this. So as the session ends, just pull up a seat to the roundtable and we'll be happy to continue the discussion. Thanks so much for your time today.